We're now starting our roundtable discussion, and this session will mainly focus on two issues strictly linked to the process of transferring. We'll try to answer two questions. The first being transferability potential and necessary adaptation, and we will try to answer all of the questions that I'm about to read. To what extent the approaches and models are sustainable to be replaced for monitoring and improving tourism performance at a different territorial level? Which kinds of adaptations would be needed to ensure a greater replication in different territories? Which kinds of actors would be most sustainable or interested in replacing the results presented? And does the transferring of proposed models entail adaptation of the policies or legislative framework? The second topic would be complementarities and synergies. The questions we're trying to answer is how could the two SP cooperate as a successful transfer of results and an active involvement of strategic government stakeholders? To what extent the complementaries of methodologies and models with other MED projects and initiatives could be exploited? And what could be the role of tourism sectors in the implementations of the EU Green Deal and neighborhood policies? And how the results of the two SPs could contribute in synergy to the work of SMARTMED, UFM, and WestMed. We have our first speaker from the Ministry of Tourism of Greece, Elia Apostopoulou. I'm sorry for the mispronunciation.
No worries. It's a long name, typical Greek, long name.
Typical Greek, I'm sorry. And the Ministry of Tourism of Greece is a coordinator of the transferring activities for both strategic projects and plays, therefore, a key role in the transferring phase that is just starting. So from the perspective, from the privileges perspective, what would you say that the respective transferring strategies could be somehow integrated and or complementary?
Okay, the one thing is that we have followed the two strategic projects well before they were even conceived. We have been a member of the thematic working group on coastal and maritime tourism of SMARTMED, as Lovre will explain in more detail later on. So we have been actively involved from the very early stages in both strategic projects. As a national authority, we were almost predetermined to assume the coordination of the work package on transferring. Because however innovative or interesting a model that is developed might be, the essence of a strategic project lies in its transferring and finally capitalization. Once those are tested and fine-tuned according to the actual needs of the real world, our work is to translate them into actual policies and put them in practice. So regarding SMARTMED, the transferring strategy, I would say, is quite challenging because the smart tourism business model consists of a matrix of pilot projects meant to test the four pillars that have been already presented, that is sustainability, cooperation and participation, human capital, and technologies and IT. Building on the results of the studying phase, the integrated smart tourism business model will be calibrated for transferability purposes in order to share best practices. Transferring will be essentially supported by an innovative e-learning platform, as Rinka already said before, where all partners' pilot projects will be available in an e-learning format as a tool for networking and disseminating knowledge and good practices. Finally, all knowledge gained from the transferable model will be integrated in a guide for public and private cooperation for sustainable and smart tourism development in the Med region. As for the Best Med project, the transferring phase for the sustainable path and cultural route model is based on the elaboration of a cooperation protocol through a wide consultation process within the partnership scheme. The cooperation protocol will set the grounds for developing an action plan with common guidelines, templates, and indicators for monitoring sustainability. Every region participating in the project will organize a respective learning seminar with the participations of the stakeholders, policymakers, representatives of local and regional bodies, and experts in the pilot area. So what we expect to see here are the good practices and synergies between SMARTMED, strategic and relevant horizontal projects, which will be presented and widely discussed during public events, both in Greece and Italy. Our goal is to establish a strategic dialogue that engages all stakeholders in the scaling and transferring of the MED sustainable path and cultural roots model across the MED region. Finally, the establishment of the network of sustainable tourism observatory will be the part of the capitalization phase. So the transferring approach of the two strategic projects in tourism have aspects that are complementary and others where we can see some integration. SmartMed is more focused on capacity building of the stakeholders for the establishment of the smart tourism business model. On the other hand, the idea of hubs and networking will be exploited to develop e-learning courses for special interest tourism and innovation. But also we have pilot projects based on the idea of smart big data. This is a very useful tool that we can call what we actually call data-driven and evidence-based policy making, which requires the adaptation of processes as well. I'm not sure if I've really answered your question.
Thank you. One more question for you. So based on the preliminary results that are presented, in your opinion, to what extent does the transferring process to the proposed models entail some kind of adaptation of the policy or legislative framework? Could you provide some concrete examples of the adaptation needed?
Okay, this is what I actually was saying, that both projects entail some kind of adaptation of processes. Collection and processing of valuable data on sustainability is the core of the Best Med model, leading to the network of sustainable tourism observatories. But then collaboration and networking is the cornerstone of both transferring approaches. Collaboration of exchange of best practices at the mid-region, that is between countries, but also collaboration and networking within each MED country across all levels of administration, that is local, regional, and national, and between public and private sector. It was already mentioned that hubs are the cornerstone of the smart tourism business model. What we should not forget is that the lack of a fruitful cooperation has already been identified as one of the major problems that tourism faces in the Med region, along with seasonality and over-tourism, of course, in the pre-COVID era. So definitely such a vision requires a welcoming policy and legislative framework. The establishment of DMOs, for example, with substantial competencies would support networking and collaboration among the stakeholders. Managing authorities of cultural routes, for example, when it comes to Best Med projects, should also be appointed with decisive and coordination competencies. Only once a critical stakeholder assumes ownership of a change will this process be translated into a public policy. Also, regarding the capitalization of results, the partners should commit to the proposed actions that will derive from the capitalization plans and integrate them into their action plans for the following years. I mean, after the end of those actual projects. So one point that should be given special attention is that the partners should allocate adequate resources, both human and financial, in order for the results of the projects to have the maximum possible effect. One way for the partners to show their commitment there would be the adoption of a memorandum for future actions that will determine a work plan with specific actions and milestones to be met by all participating actors. Thank you very much. I hope I've answered your question, and I will be available for any additional ones during the next session.
Thank you. Thank you very much. If you have a specific question, please put it on the platform or in Slido and just make a note for who's it for so that we can address it properly. Thank you very much. Next, coming up from Malta is Daniela Azzopardi. And the Malta Tourism Authority falls under the responsibility of the Ministry for Tourism of Malta. In particular, it plays a key role in promoting the island as a tourist destination, but also contributing to the overall improvement of tourism including advising the government on planning and development of the industry, as well as assisting to advising on any tourism-related issues. Initially, as an associated partner for both strategic projects, the Malta Tourism Authority has been following both projects, and lately very closely, in particular, the progress of SMARTMED. Based on what has been presented in the first session, but also considering the current pandemic situation, and what is your view on the approaches and models presented? To what extent would these both, or one of them in particular, be suitable to be replicated for monitoring and improving tourism performance in Malta? And which kinds of adaptations would be needed to ensure a greater replication in your territory?
Thank you, Eva. So sustainability and sustainable development have been much used buzzwords for the past 15 years, both nationally and even at an EU level. But as a result of the pandemic, I think that sustainability has become a fundamental tool for recovery for many sectors, especially tourism. The changes in our various tourism landscapes, which have seen a total break from visitors, has hurt many, many economies. But it has also given us pause for thought on how heritage sites, natural landscapes, and even societies have felt the difference of less crowds, for example, particularly during the summer months because of seasonality in the Med area. The SMARTMED model was developed within this new reality. So sustainability, economic, environmental, and social sustainability became very important and poignant ideals and realities during the pandemic. Even the skills training aspect, which was also a very important, a key point that resulted as part of the SMARTMED model. The reality of the pandemic not only stalled tourism, but it hit at the very core of what it means to be social beings, what it means to be human. Travel in all its forms is a core part of our social fabric in the Mediterranean. And Malta, as a main tourism destination where our economic and social development is intrinsically entwined in tourism, has been hit particularly hard. Strategically, Malta has recently launched two important strategic documents. The first relates to, obviously, the recovery plan, which is a short-term plan, which links to coming out of the 2021 mini lockdown that we had. But more importantly, it has also launched the tourism strategy 2021-2030, which is based on three main principles: recovery, rethink, and revitalize. Through this strategy, Malta aims to develop a medium to long-term approach where it reassesses tourism behavioral changes, strengthens the island's competitiveness by increasing visitor satisfaction, and ultimately developing a tourism product which is climate resilient and innovative. So through this strategy, one can see that the future is closely linked to the SMARTMED model overall objective for tourism in the Med area. In fact, one particular action that the MTA implemented immediately as the pandemic was launched, as the pandemic came about, which was last May, we launched a scheme for digital training and reinforcing skills in tourism. It was completely taken up by the local tourism sector, and we realized that the need for constant training in tourism is sought after by the tourism sector. Considering the impact of the pandemic, however, we think that the smart tourism model will only take us so far. Malta is an insular island. It is an island destination, so we don't have land borders. So for us, domestic tourism is not a reality we can look into. We need air links, which to a certain extent might make us less sustainable, but they are needed for us to continue our success as a tourism destination. However, I do think there is room for adapting the SMARTMED model in various ways and mirroring various levels of governance. The SMARTMED model, as developed, is a high-level strategic model, which looks at a high-level strategic approach. So there is the possibility of breaking down this model further in future collaborative projects to allow for variations at regional level or even at more low-level approaches like intra-tourism sectoral approaches. This is particularly important, I think, because it would offer the possibility for more private sector involvement to create action plans and strategies involving the private sector and making them key stakeholders in the future development and future success of the tourism sector. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would just like to remind you, for any questions, you can post them on the platform, or you can use the raise hand button and we'll get to you. Thank you very much. Coming up next is from Barcelona, Josep Rodriguez. As a thematic community, you bring together a variety of relevant tourism stakeholders in the Mediterranean, and you are placed, therefore, in a privileged position to understand the priorities and needs of the sector in the Mediterranean. Moreover, the community is currently focusing on its transferring phase. From your valuable experience and the work carried out in the last years, do you think that the results presented respond effectively to the needs of the sector, or do you have any specific recommendations in that regard? And also bearing in mind the current pandemic situation. And which kinds of actors would be most suitable and interested in replicating these results?
Okay, thank you. Thank you for inviting us also to this interesting webinar. I think, first of all, we have to celebrate these initiatives to generate this platform of cooperation between destinations that are facing the same challenges. Even we are in a competitive world, so we are competitors as a tourist sector, but we are also facing these challenges concerning the sustainability. As a community of projects, we have been always considering the strategic projects as a part of our community. So our community now is composed by 24 projects involving more than 200 stakeholders working in the field of sustainable tourism. So as you have seen in the previous session, some parts of the outputs of the strategic projects are based on the results of the modular projects of the community. So I think it's a win-win situation for all of us. Well, concerning your questions, we are making some recommendations also to the modular projects, to the projects of our community concerning the transferring and capitalization. So in some sense, I will repeat these recommendations concerning the transferring process. Concerning the interest of the sector, I would highlight the need to identify concrete outputs and also to clarify the conditions for replicability. So in this sense, for me, it's crucial to be as specific as possible because the tourism is a very fragmented sector. It's composed by private and public stakeholders. Within the private sector, there are big companies, a lot of small companies. So the needs and requirements of the specific stakeholders are different. So the outputs produced by the projects have to take into account what is the specific target of them in order to be more efficient in this transferring process. Also, we have several types of destinations. We have sun and beach, urban tourism, rural tourism, and Mediterranean is quite diverse. So the needs of the different destinations are also diverse. Another recommendation would be not to forget that tourism is an economic sector. So all the tools produced by our projects should be integrated into the market, because at the end, they will be to be assumed or to be integrated in all the value chain of the tourist sector. So this is something important to take into account. And also to take advantage of the existing initiatives so far. For instance, the WTO or the Council of Europe have developed some tools related to the outputs presented today. So in some sense, we have to highlight what is the added value of the outputs produced by the projects in order to also to increase the transferring and capitalization process. And finally, as Elia already mentioned, the need to allocate resources and governance schemes to guarantee the continuity of the outputs, of how these outputs would be maintained once the project has finished. And let me also say a final word concerning the COVID scenario. Even all the projects of the MED, the Interim MED program, were designed in a pre-COVID scenario. We are obliged to provide solutions to implement the recovery of the tourist sector. So in this sense, I see that many Panorama MED partners are national and regional governments. So they are competent authorities in the field of tourism. And also, as Daniela said, there will be concrete opportunities in the ERDF operational programs in the future, in the next programming period, and also in the recovery funds for the national and regional governments in the coming years. So, how to integrate the results of SMARTMED and Best Med into these new programs, into these new funding opportunities, I think would be a key issue.
Thank you so much. And one more question, in your opinion, how could the community project help the strategic project in their transferring actions?
Well, very briefly, as I said, we have been considering the strategic projects as a part of the community. So we are sharing initiatives. We are collaborating with them in the sharing of information, webinars, and transferring activities. So we have already cooperation mechanisms with them. And in the coming months, there will be some transferring capitalization activities organized by the community, and of course we will disseminate and invite the strategic projects to participate in them. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. If you have any questions for Joseph, you know where to go right now, so please feel free to ask questions. And next coming up is Lovre Karamarko, our very own acting head of service for transitional and interregional cooperation as a part of Ministry of Regional Development and EU funds for the Republic of Croatia. Being the so-called governance platform project of Interreg MED program, PanoraMed could be considered as the main cooperation framework under which the two strategic projects were conceived and launched. As a leader of the Coastal and Maritime Tourism VP of PanoraMed, you have been personally following the development and the progress of the two strategic projects since the very beginning. Considering the expertise gained in the last 2 years in relation to the tourism and the related governance issue, how could the two strategic projects cooperate with PanoraMed for a more successful transferring of results and an active involvement of strategic government stakeholders?
Yes, thank you for the question. Before I start, I would like to give credit to you as the organizer of this event and to greet so many familiar faces. Of course, I'm greeting you on behalf of the PanoraMed, on behalf of the Ministry of Regional Development and EU funds as a leader of Work Package 5, Coastal Maritime Tourism, as well as I would like to highlight the great support that we steadily getting from our colleagues from Tuscany region who are co-leader of this very work package. As you mentioned, yes, the SmartMed as a top-down governance platform is called and is entity that needs to give us certain questions, solutions, suggestions. Naturally, we do have them, but mind you, the strategic team coastal maritime tourism is one of the three teams within the SmartMed, apart from the maritime surveillance and innovation. And mind you that due to its heterogeneity, it was, I would say, a roller coaster, especially due to recent happenings regarding the COVID. As you mentioned, from the very beginning, we have been engaged because within SmartMed, we have been drafting terms of reference where we directly defined which are the needs that need to be tackled within the tourism. And I would say that these two very projects that have been implementing are doing their best to do it. But the main issue from the point of SmartMed is generality and vague of tourism as such. And according to my experience and previously colleagues already outlined it quite well, we need to find an approach that's going to generate a concrete solution that's going to fulfill expectation from the stakeholders, but as well going to be recognized from the policy actors as those who need to implement them for this financial perspective and times to come, especially knowing how hard is to predict what's going to happen after the COVID situation. So basically, we did, from general perspective, prepared several documents which were, I would say, backbone for the moment in which we are now. I'm going to come to it. So we previously, after the terms of reference, according to which the project were elected and implemented, we can prepare the Gaps and Growth Opportunities report on the maritime and tourism coast in Mediterranean, which recognized, I would say, the problems that are present, and we suggest a certain solution that might be put in place. On top of that, we as well recently prepared a key policy paper with recommendation which are most beneficial in terms of all engaged stakeholders in tourism that might be put in practice, and we try to make them as much as possible general and applicable in order to have transferability potential. So according to feedback, it's quite a successful document. And I would say as a last part of those documents is the scheme for coordination modalities with strategic projects, because as everybody was highlighting, we need to have concrete activities. So thanks to this very document, we in a way prepared the methodology of evaluation, of monitoring and capitalization, which in a way is a path how we're going to cooperate with our with these two strategic projects which have been implemented without within work package 5, namely coastal maritime tourism. So basically, within this very document, we tried not to monitor and to assess the activities of these two projects. We wanted to find the potential for further capitalization of their results and activities. So basically, within this very document, we outlined the possibilities which might be put on higher level throughout the panorama, because we do have colleagues who are dealing with specific work package, namely liaising, mainstreaming communication, and those, according to our, I would say, appraisals are the fields where we may make improvements. So basically, at very beginning, we were preparing the document together with lead partners of both strategic projects, and they, in a way, gave their feedback regarding the liaising coordination modalities. How could we possibly improve our strategic liaising activities, empower contacts between SPs as well as horizontal projects, find the means for clustering meet partners, and potentially organize specific events, meeting workshops like this one today is. Apart from that, the great opportunity is mainstreaming So we need to support it, and in case to do it, we need to identify relevant outputs for the mainstreaming process. We need to identify potential receivers for the mainstreaming process and establish closer cooperation. And finally, as another action that needs to take place within our cooperation is communication and capitalization action. So we need to raise general visibility level and promotion of actions, events, and results, identify the best practice, sharing methodologies, best practice, and prepare ourselves for future perspective. So basically, in order we can do it, as I highlighted, both projects as well as PanoramaMed are living processes which need to be monitored, evaluated, and in the end capitalized. I would say define 3 prerequisites how to do it. So we need the assessment from the qualitative point of view. So need to conclude what is the level of coherence among the objectives between strategic projects and PanoramaMed. How can we contribute to wider strategies, EU strategies, national, regional, local level, because our stakeholders are coming from all of those levels and need to be put on board. What is the basis for future collaboration relied on existing results and practice, and what might be added value to transnational cooperation in general. So besides that quality assessment, in order to be sure that they are on the we as a community, and by that I'm not only referring to PanoramaMed and strategic project, I'm referring to horizontal project as well, because the tourism is due to heterogeneity has potential to engage so many stakeholders, so that they are as well the ones who are engaged and may give their input. So we need to have progress monitoring in order to define level of accordance in terms of the current project implementation, anticipated activities. And in the end, we need to conclude which are the capitalization possibilities, what are the level of accordance with target group needs, and level of applicability of the main outputs and deliverables. So in order to do so, not only that we prepared within the PanoramaMed our work package, this very document, we as well, I would say, formed the focus groups. And within those focus groups, we are having the close meetings with the representatives of these 2 strategic projects. And we as a representative of our work package are tackling and dealing with the issues that need to be addressed and need to be get rid of through concrete results. So basically, how we foreseen it is to have each 4 months those focus groups. The first one we have in this March, where we arrange in a way the pace and the following activities. So basically, according to these focus groups, we're going to hopefully achieve some results according to the criterion that I mentioned previously, and give concrete follow-up reports that we are supposed to give them on the level of PanoramaMed twice a year. So basically, those follow-up reports gonna give concrete results of our cooperation, what can be capitalized and mainstream in best possible way, of course, in general for whole Mediterranean. And on top of that, as a certain paramount, I would say, it's high-level event that we are supposed to have within the PanoramaMed, namely our work package, where we are planning to call all related and interested stakeholders in a way to present everything that has been achieved within our work package, together with cooperation with strategic projects. And I would say that would be a great opportunity to present the deliverables, which make a difference in terms of tourism and Mediterranean as such. And to finish with, afterwards, after that high-level event that's supposed to take place at the end of the year, we're gonna have a memorandum of understanding in order to all these findings, results, and potential that both strategic projects, PanorAMed, horizontal projects offers, to be put in a concrete document that would, at some point, mandate the stakeholders to put them in place in order to make tourism better in any possible way. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You answered my second question. So thank you very much for being here today with us. Next up, we have from Interreg Med Program Joint Secretariat, Pascal Lagaye. Sorry for the last name. I hope it's correct.
No worries, that's it.
So the Interreg Med program has strongly supported and promoted the mission of PanorAMed and its strategic programs in all of different fields, the MNC, tourism, maritime surveillance, and innovation throughout the whole process. In addition, the JC project officer in charge of the sustainable tourism community, you can also count on an in-depth knowledge of the activities and results, but also the added value and the challenges of the projects belonging to this specific community. Based on your experience, do you have any specific recommendations for the development and the effective implementation of the SP transferring strategies in relation to the resulted presented? And from a broader program perspective, since tourism will be a topic in the next programming period, what could be its role in contributing of the implementation of the EU Green Deal?
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you, Eva. So here we have two questions. So the first one on the recommendations for the development of transferring strategies for the strategic projects. Well, I will not give you any new ideas, maybe just insist on what is important for us. Besides working on the complementarity between both projects, as Francesca and Nicola insisted on this morning, I would say that projects should keep working with existing med networks. Of course, they can use the networks thanks to the partnership that they have with PanorAMed and their associated partners, but also use the tourism community, as Joseph presented earlier, particularly through the angels from the horizontal projects. They are already working on synergies between partners, so they can allow a possible transfer of results. And so they can be a helpful guide with sharing their methodologies with modular projects. And also the projects can think about the new coming projects on transfer and mainstream that will be selected soon, and that will start in June. So maybe it's another idea. So the thing is just to keep the dialogue alive between stakeholders. And then going beyond the med world, you can also, but you already started it, get closer to other opportunities. So for instance, the bodies present today, the Union for Mediterranean, the MEST Web initiatives, the user strategies. So that is also important to develop this kind of links. And also I was thinking that seeking for other funds can be really interesting to be able to continue and enrich the activities implemented in the Mediterranean area. So the thing is, the project should keep their role of link between actors. In the current programming period, we saw that the strategic projects appear as a convergence projects. So there are the links that have been missing until now between the thematic communities and the platform projects within the MED program. So we could take advantage of this privileged situation. And concerning the future programming period, where we will have a specific objective on governance, that will seek to facilitate the transfer of results to other stakeholders and also their mainstreaming. The results from the strategic projects will be of great interest. So the main recommendation here would be to have a wide vision from a short term to a long term, of course, at the time of writing the transfer strategies, but also during the implementation and in the long-term follow-up that partners can consider to the transfer of the results with all the opportunities that are mentioned today. The models that we saw for this morning for integrated tourism planning must themselves be integrated into broader approaches. So you have to see beyond the med area and beyond also the project lifetime. So this was for your first question. All the clue I can give you concerning the recommendation. And now going back to the link with the Green Deal. So the Green Deal has largely influenced the drafting of the new Euromed program. And indeed, we share several objectives, such as the promotion of circular economy, restoration of biodiversity, reduction of pollution. So we are both the program, the future Euromed program, and the Green Deal heading towards a climate neutral society. And within those objectives, the tourism has an important role to play. The states of the program, as you said, have chosen to put the tourism as a cross-cutting theme to address all these objectives. So this means that, for instance, the tourism projects will be able to address the challenges under the angle of innovation, circular economy, protection of biodiversity. So they will embrace in the largest way all the objectives of the program that are following the Green Deal's ones. And by the new architecture of the program, the projects will be able to help to reach those objectives in a targeted manner, because we have different typologies of projects. Maybe it's not here the time to explain them in detail, but we will have single model projects working on studies, testing, and transfer. And then we will have thematic community projects and institutional projects. So at different level, they will be able to tackle these objectives. For the tourism, it has been recognized as really important by the Med states, and it is positions on all the program objectives. So logically, tourism will it will tackle the Green Deal's objectives. So as everybody, a lot of persons mentioned it before, it is a good point to use this opportunity to recover after the health crisis and to adapt smartly its development in the, I've heard this expression several times, the world after. So that is what the program can contribute to the Green Deal. And going back to the specifically to the strategic projects, their governance models, they can help to go beyond the projects and help the whole Mediterranean. Generally speaking, their objectives for tourism will definitely contribute to the Green Deal's objectives. So they will participate to boost the economy, improve people's health and quality of life, care for nature, and leave no one behind. So they definitely have an asset to play.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Coming up next, we have Stephanie Vela from Best MED Initiative. Welcome. Hello. And now moving on from a strictly EU Mediterranean perspective to a much wider approach, This part of the roundtable is aimed at gathering insightful reflections and suggestions for a successful transferring of the SP results in territories beyond the project scope. In this context, the WestMed initiative, supported by the European Commission to help create a smarter and more resilient blue economy and improve the maritime governance for the Western Mediterranean, can certainly be a key of cooperation framework and play a big role in involving the key stakeholders from both shores of the West Mediterranean. And the question for you, as a representative of a WestMed national hub in contact with territorial actors, do you consider the work carried out by the two strategic projects is in line with the initiative objectives?
Thank you, Eva. So let me just give you a brief idea of what the WestMed is all about. Well, the WestMed is basically a collaboration which was undertaken by 10 ministers across the Western Mediterranean. So there are a number of countries which are involved in the WestMed, including France. So from the Northern Mediterranean side, we have France, Portugal, Malta, Italy, and Spain. And from the Southern Mediterranean, our partners include Algeria, Libya, Mauritania, Morocco, and Tunisia. And so basically these ministers, together with the European Commission and with the Union for the Mediterranean, in 2018 decided to take a declaration in order to strengthen the regional cooperation across the Western Mediterranean region. So basically, towards this end, what the initiative did was it established a roadmap, and the roadmap of the WestMed is basically focuses on sustainable blue economy for the sub-basin region, with a specific focus, obviously, on generating growth, jobs, and a sustainable environment in the Mediterranean area. And it basically has three main goals, and the three goals are to have a safer and more secure maritime space, to have a smart and resilient blue economy, and to have an improved maritime governance, which has been quite a big issue in today's discussion. And through these specific 10 goals, through these specific three goals, there are then 10 priorities which has been developed within the WestMed. And the two projects, these two strategic projects which have been discussed today, the BestMed and the SmartMed, are very, very much congruent with the objectives of the WestMed, particularly when it comes to research and innovation in the maritime sector, but more importantly also when it comes to sustainable consumption and production, including obviously coastal tourism, as well as spatial planning and coastal management, where for each of these areas, obviously governance plays a very key and critical role. Other areas of the WestMed initiative include maritime safety, cluster development, maritime knowledge, biodiversity, some of which we have already discussed or touched upon very slightly in today's discussion as well. But I'd like to emphasize that one of the key objectives of the initiative is very much to bring stakeholders in the Western Mediterranean region together. And the scope of bringing these stakeholders together is to discuss and address the common challenges which we obviously all have together across a number of sectors, but in particular when it comes to tourism, for example, but not only to identify these common challenges, but more importantly to develop synergies in order to be able to tap into the common opportunities which exist as well across all of the partners which are involved in the WestMed region. And I think that today's joint transferring seminar fits in very well with this objective, not only because it has brought in stakeholders together across two projects, but more importantly, it has allowed for the presentation of two key and very complementary results, which are definitely to the benefit, obviously, of the Mediterranean region. And I think that in today's environment, with stakeholders obviously facing limitations when it comes to resources, be they funding, or time resources, or even restrictions in terms of human resources, I think we really need to gear up our efforts in order to draw on the lessons which can be learned through these projects and replicating them across the Mediterranean, particularly across those partners who may not be directly involved in these types of projects.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I have a few more questions for you, and one of them is, could the results produced be of interest and easily replicated for the stakeholders you are in touch with?
The definitive answer to that question is yes, definitely yes. So I think these results are definitely of great interest to the stakeholders in the West Med region. I think that unfortunately, and I think that this point has been brought out today as well, that the knowledge which is being created by a number of projects, not only Interreg projects, but even wider projects in general across the Mediterranean, are not really being fully exploited, whether it is on the ground or even possibly even at a regional level. And I think that one of the reasons for this is that possibly not enough stakeholders are being reached when it comes to particularly transferring the results which are coming out from projects. With this in mind, the West Med recently, in collaboration with the Blue Med and with a number of partners who are also involved today, including Interreg and CPMR, recently we held a webinar focusing on sustainable tourism, particularly on the emphasis of building resilience. But the scope of the webinar was not just to showcase some very important projects which are focusing on sustainable tourism, but more importantly on how the lessons which are being learned from these projects can actually be extended across the Western Mediterranean area. And the particular emphasis there was on the Southern partners, because as is evident today in both projects, there's participation from countries which are in the northern part of the Mediterranean. So there's Spain, there's Italy, there's Malta, there's a number of countries, but unfortunately the participation from the southern Mediterranean countries tends to be lacking, obviously, for various reasons, including the possibility of tapping into funding opportunities. So we thought, the development of a webinar which focuses specifically on drawing on these lessons, but seeing on how these lessons can be replicated, particularly for the southern partners, will allow for a greater outreach of stakeholders, obviously for the benefit of the Western Mediterranean region. So in fact, the southern partners have already expressed their interest in the application of these results. And obviously, specifically, one of the main challenges is related to the governance structure. And this is obviously a key and essential component, which is very important. I think at the moment, the future of tourism is very much at a crosspath, with emphasis on short-term recovery, but also I think we're at a crossroad in terms of looking at the sustainability, obviously, of the region, as a number of speakers have already pointed out before me. And I think governance is definitely a critical part, which is going to determine, is definitely a critical area, which is going to determine which path we should obviously be focusing on. When it comes to the replicability, I think obviously the application of the methodologies has been extremely interesting, and I think there's definitely scope in terms of replicating these methodologies, as well as the methods. And I think here a particular point is the way in which both projects are effectively engaging stakeholders within the governance structure is a very key aspect which requires replicability across the Western Mediterranean region. Again, the interest in replicating these results, I think, stems mainly from the fact that we are actually trying to address common risks and challenges. I mean, this has been really brought to the forefront due to the effect of COVID, with obviously a number of countries which have been severely negatively impacted when it comes to COVID. There has possibly been some respite from the environment when it comes to the impact of tourism, obviously with a slowdown in tourism, but the economic and social implications have been quite enormous. And it will take time to rebound, obviously, from this. From a governance perspective, it's very important to take this time, possibly with a very positive attitude, and try to tap into the opportunities which might exist. So Daniela is obviously a colleague here from Malta, but as she pointed out before, it was very breathtaking to see that, for example, in Malta, there was a lot of emphasis on skills development, looking at the opportunity at this point in time to really focus on skills development for the tourism sector. Usually it's very fast, you know, the tourism sector, we were forced to slow down and obviously focus on a particular area. So with that, I think we really have scope for continuing to really add value beyond what has been really achieved. As the WestMed, as part of the WestMed initiative, I think we really need to exploit further the synergies, not just between ourselves, but I think really important that we really include stakeholders within the Southern partners. And we really need to effectively reach more to these stakeholders. And obviously, the WestMed has a key role to play in this regard, and it obviously will seek to continue to actively play a very important role in this regard, not only in supporting the dissemination of the results for the benefits of the region, but also in terms of bringing stakeholders together so that we can continue obviously to address common challenges within the sector.
Thank you very much. And one last question for you. In your opinion, what would be the most important issues to be tackled in the process of transferring and capitalizing results in the Med?
Okay. So I think when it comes to transferring and capitalizing results, I think we really need to look at it from possibly from two perspectives. So I think one is the approach which takes into account the output and the results which are obviously coming out of these projects and other projects, and integrating them really into higher level strategies, which will really address the common challenges addressed by the Mediterranean region. And here, obviously, the engagement of policy players is very critical in this regard. So it's very refreshing today to note that a number of speakers have also been emphasizing on the importance of taking on the lessons from these results and making sure that they feed into the next funding programs. It's a very, very, very critical aspect, because all of these ideas, the replicability of these ideas, the transferability of these results will really depend on whether there are resources actually available to make this happen. So obviously at a higher level, it's very important that we reach these stakeholders. And we need to ensure that there is enhanced collaboration in that respect. The second, I think, is we have to really make sure that we can really tailor the output and the results so that they can be implemented more at a national and more at a local level. Obviously, I think we have to also be appreciative of the fact that in terms of applying these results at a local level and at a national level, there are obviously going to be challenges, in particular because even across the Western Mediterranean region, the governance structures differ quite significantly. But as we said, if there are common challenges to address, then having a good governance platform, which might differ across countries, but which are really based on the same objective, trying to address the same common challenge, then this is something which can be doable. So promoting obviously the active involvement and participation of the diverse stakeholders is really critical in ensuring that there's transferability. The WestMed is actually trying to do something in this regard as well. So we're really supporting the development of the Sustainable Tourism Observatory, which has also been mentioned today, but emphasizing once again across the Southern partners. So we're really trying to promote the benefits of the Sustainable Tourism Observatory among the social partners of the Western Mediterranean, so that this kind of can serve as an extension of the Best Med project as well, focusing obviously on data management and overall governance. I think that tourism in the Western Mediterranean region definitely has a remarkable potential for growth, but the extent to which that growth can be reaped really depends on the development of an effective governance structure. And I think that also the potential for more sustainable, there's definitely room for more sustainable and innovative practices as well in the tourism sector, and the need for building an innovative and resilient business model, including advanced technologies. And once again, here in this respect, the WestMed is also trying to bring stakeholders together in order to develop a tourism accelerator project. So we're a bit at an infancy at this point on the development of this project, but the idea behind it is obviously to exploit the potential of relevant stakeholders, particularly with an emphasis of greater cooperation when it comes to digitalization, transfer of technology, the capitalization, bringing young future entrepreneurs together in the blue tourism sector, and trying to find ways in terms of how we can really capitalize on successful projects for the benefit, again, once again, for the entire Western Mediterranean region.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Eva. Thank you.
Before we continue, I would just like to say there's a question on the platform. Will the presentations be available? And don't worry, you'll receive everything in your email after the conference, and there will be more materials available later on the project's website. Okay, so to continue, we have with us Alessandra Sessi and Michael Colavito from the Union for the Mediterranean. And in an even wider cooperation framework, the Union for the Mediterranean is another essential speaker when discussing about transferring and capitalizing tools and practices that could be relevant to further enhancing dialogues and cooperation in the area in relation to a variety of sectors. Among others, sustainable tourism was recognized as a key priority in the UFM Ministerial Declaration on Sustainable Blue Economy adopted last February. In this context, the UFM plays a key role with a view to promoting an inclusive participation for the Southern and Eastern partners. And a question for you, in your opinion, which kinds of synergies could be sought or built between the two strategic programs and the current UFM initiative in this sense? For instance, what about the UFM technical assistance specifically focusing on integrating territorial development applied to sustainable tourism?
Thank you very much, Eva. And let me touch actually on the points that you just mentioned, maybe to present a bit more the larger, agenda on sustainable tourism that indeed, as you correctly said, was somehow reflected officially in the UFM Ministerial Declaration on Sustainable Blue Economy on the 2nd of February. What is extraordinary in this phase is that there was a call by all the 42 UFM countries to have a specific section on tourism, recognized as actually common key sector, let's say, of activity. Now, let's say all the transformation of the tourism sector more in sustainability terms were already there in the previous year, but of course they became stronger also in this specific historical phase due, of course, to the COVID crisis. That, of course, it's a crisis, but again, it's a very clear, let's say, opportunity for rethinking, as you all colleagues, friends, and speakers were indeed mentioning before. Let me more specifically maybe touch on the points that the declaration was it's actually referring to, because they provide, of course, a guidance for all and for our, let's say, agenda on sustainable tourism, which is, of course, a common agenda of countries and all, let's say, implementing stakeholders. And in a certain way summarize what has been said up to now. So it's a promotion of policy coordination, stakeholders collaboration and cooperation mechanism, which is exactly what we said, of course, with a larger scope, which is the one of fully including all the non-EU, let's say, countries, UFM countries belonging to this important Mediterranean partnership, develop, of course, comprehensive monitoring, evaluation, and statistic schemes, and promote the digitalization of the sector, implement sectorial strategies and action plan to green and reduce carbon emission, which is what was mentioned also today, seasonality and over-tourism, encouraging experience-based and slow tourism, as well as associating the interland, promote ecotourism and niche tourism, as well as promote fiscal and investment policies to support sustainable coastal and marine tourism. As I was mentioning, I mean, for us, of course, a very important element to add to all these is, of course, also the employment dimension. I mean, of course, the tourism sector is a very important sector, both for youth, women, among others. So economically, let's say, vital in this sense. And that's why in this, let's say, broader context, we have launched, let's say, these technical assistance, which indeed aims at, let's say, capitalizing and, let's say, giving a life, as it was mentioned, beyond projects of all, let's say, the operational tools, methods, and technologies for the revitalization of the tourism sector along the lines of what I just, let's say, mentioned, building indeed on projects like the one that we are discussing and looking at today, which we consider strategic and actually key in terms of tools that they provide. Let's say that the technical assistance that we are sort of sharing with the support, in fact, of a group of experts along you know, which encompass, of course, also some of the speakers here today with us. I mean, is indeed aiming at supporting the social and economic regeneration of the Mediterranean region, indeed after the crisis. And let's say wants to be indeed an operational handbook where also, let's say, we have a full integration also of the local dimension. This is also a lesson learned of the COVID crisis, how important it is indeed to involve and ensure, you know, this multi-level governance. And of course, there are actors, operators that know the local reality better than anybody else, and indeed can provide important, let's say, tips for, you know, the rethinking of this important economic sector. Again, the principle that we have been using, let's say, and we are using again together with key stakeholders, as I mentioned, to sort of put together this handbook is indeed that tourism be not a competitive sector, but rather, let's say, a sector of further, let's say, cooperation, the need, of course, to increase awareness, not just at policy level. I mean, I think already the ministerial declaration represents, you know, witness the level of awareness that there is at policy level on the importance of the sector itself. So also, you know, to make more aware local communities of the importance of the contribution that they can give, and the importance indeed to adopt a fully territorial approach that doesn't aim only to enhance the cost of maritime tourism, but indeed also inland areas. About, you know, the point of resources in terms of human and financial resources, of course, I mean, let me also back what the colleague from the West Med, Stephanie, was actually mentioning. Of course, I mean, there is a need to look carefully also at how to support, you know, and ensure the ownership also of the countries of the South that are there and are very clear the willingness actually to be part of this important common exercise. And in this respect, actually, we really welcome the very open approach of the InterAgMed Joint Secretariat, actually, to have even the countries of the South more and more involved, even as associate partners. We hope, actually, that can be also advanced in terms of partnership in the years to come. But I think this was a very important, let's say, progress, even in terms, let's say, of the dialogue and way forward. We are also preparing some, you know, capacity building activities in relation, you know, to the handbook itself. And if you allow me, Eva, I will just pass the floor to Michele on that, so he can shortly complement what I just said. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Alessandra. And good morning, everybody. This is really a pleasure for me to attend this meeting. I know many of you, as Alessandra already told, because we established this very small working group in order to identify the best features to be developed in the framework of this handbook that we are preparing, and even considering the capacity building sessions that we are going to implement before the summer break and then after also the summer break. Let me tell you that we are indeed, even according and listening to all your contributions, we are indeed facing a unique opportunity to, let's say, to collect all the significant experiences and skills to promote the best synergies in the Mediterranean in order to, let's say, to regenerate the tourism sector in both shore of the Mediterranean basin. And I think that the UFM and CPMR, which is the co-coordinator of these activities, let's say, have the responsibility to, let's say, to put together these two shores of the Mediterranean, starting from the tourism sector. As Alessandra told us before, we are organizing these capacity building sessions because we would like to share with all the main players in the Mediterranean countries the main, let's say, measures to be adopted in order to regenerate the sector. But let's say the key to be really effective and to join impact on these issues is that we would like to put together not only the different governance levels, so the national one and the regional one, but also the main stakeholders that can, in a way, translate in concrete terms the initiatives and the strategies adopted by at the institutional level. That's why it could be very important for us to interact with all of you with the experience at project level promoted by SMARTMED program in order to, let's say, to put around one virtual table, let's say, for this moment, all the main players and stakeholders that can really help us to implement these initiatives. That's my contribution. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and actually this session, sorry, Michele, just to complement also to what you said, is indeed, I mean, could be a good, merging opportunities also with the countries of the South. So it could be inclusive so as to, looking together, which could be indeed more in depth all these needs, let's say, for the very coming future to ensure the ownership and the participation that we are all calling for. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you to all of our speakers. I see that we have a few questions, so we're going to start in some order. So for the first question would be addressed to the WestMed and UFM representatives. So Alessandra or Stephanie, if you could take this question. In addition to the model presented, BestMed is developing a framework for a network of sustainable tourism observations that will also be promoted through the final Granada chapter, one of the key deliverables of the projects. Do you think that the idea of NSTO could help to improve the governance of sustainable tourism policies in the Mediterranean area?
Sorry, I just take the floor because Stephanie actually referred to it, and sorry, maybe I skip it out of the many other things that I wanted to highlight. But surely we see actually the setting up of this network as something very relevant, and not by chance in a certain way it's also reflected in the ministerial itself. So we see it as very important actually tool indeed to ensure what is referred to indeed in the ministerial in terms of monitoring and evaluation also of what's going on in the region, and address the specific actions accordingly.
Thank you, Stephanie. Would you like to add something?
Yes, so there's definitely scope for extending the issue of the observatories further, and as I mentioned in the webinar, which we hosted in December, there was actually this idea in terms of the extent to which this is something which would really interest the Southern partners. And there was general consensus that obviously the development of an observatory, which would include the Southern partners, is definitely an area of interest. And I think I'd also like to really reiterate that this issue in terms of having an observatory is very critical in terms of developing effective governance structures, because I don't think we can have better management really of the Western Mediterranean region unless we have better data or better measurement tools in order to be able to assess where it's going wrong, where it's going well, in which areas it's going well, and in which areas it's not going well. So this issue of developing the observatories, I think, is very critical in terms of having an effective governance structure.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We have another question, and maybe Joseph Rodriguez, you could start with the answer, and then somebody could also interject. The question is, the SmartMed tourism business model considers common needs and challenges of the Mediterranean region in view of building a smarter and more sustainable tourism. To what extent this model can contribute to ensure greater resilience of tourism, also considering the COVID-19 pandemic?
Well, thank you for the answer. I think that the smart tourism model is considering the most important axes that have to take into account at the DMO level. So, in my opinion, it could be a useful tool to be adopted by the DMOs in order to start establishing their strategies for the future. And of course, the DMOs are very different depending on the type of destinations, territory involved, and so on. But each of us have to adapt this smart tourist business model according to the specific needs. But I think what is important is to have a wide vision of what is happening in the destination, taking into account, because for several years, as the tourist sector was going well in some sense, many destinations were focused on the promotion of the destination. But now, currently, and even with the COVID situation, we see that it's very important to have to have a look on what is happening about the impacts of the tourism, not only from the environmental aspect, but also as a social aspect, for instance, and what is happening with the management of data. This is a crucial point that we have seen now with the COVID-19, how to use the big data and how important it is, and also the aspect of the governance. Not only between the private and public stakeholders, but also with what is happening with the local population and also with the tourism. So to establish clear governance mechanisms, it is crucial for the future of the tourism and for its resilience and sustainability. So I consider that this wide vision of what a destination is and who is participating in this destination is a crucial point.
If I could add to this, Eva, I couldn't agree more with Joseph. I think that this cornerstone of SmartMed project that pertains to hubs should be established through DMOs. And as Josip said, until now, we have been looking at DMOs simply as organizations that should be assigned with the promotion of the destination. But I think we should look at them as something more than this. We should look at them as integrally a destination management organization, and we should combine two intrinsic ideas in each project. The one is networking and hubs, and the other is sustainability measurement. And I think that we should assign to DMOs the commitment to collect and process data at the local level, because this is the idea in Best Med, that the managing authority of a cultural path should in a way be responsible to gather the data, because they do have a better idea of what's happening in their territory. So I think that we should assign DMOs with the competency to measure the impact on sustainability in their territory and use this data in order to to produce policies, because we need evidence-based policies. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would anybody else like to interject? Okay, then we're going to go to another question. So we have one from our attendees, from Luca. So Luca, you can now unmute yourself and post your question, ask your question. You have your hand up.
Yes.
Okay, can you unmute yourself?
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Yes, thank you.
Okay, Luca Santarossa from WWF MED. The question is very short to address to the UFM Mrs. Sensi representative, UFM representative. Talking about governance, now we need, let's say, a stable place of policy making, as GFCM makes for fishery, or Mediterranean Action Plan made for environment. Does UFM has this idea in mind, in the sense to create a table among ministers of tourism to make strategies, to create standards, etc., etc.? Thanks.
Luca, I mean, it's a very interesting question, and frankly, I don't see any, let's say, impediment towards going in that direction. As you know, by mandate, we have a multi-stakeholder working group. So should the countries and the stakeholders eventually calling for a more dedicated group or task force on this, I think that could be easily taken into consideration. I hope that such a clear answer actually responds to your question. And of course, I mean, let me add something more, which is, you mentioned some other, regional organization, but of course, I mean, we are in very close contact. So I would avoid, making any division. We are here to work all together. So should that be under the UFM or other, organization, for us, it's fine, as long as all the actors have a voice. We are eventually, of course, available for this. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Do we have any more questions? You can just raise your hand. You have a little raise hand button on the bottom. This question posed by Luca was in the Slido as well, so okay. Any questions from anyone? Would somebody like to add something? Claudia, maybe you? Yeah, we can hear
yes, you. Yes, just no, I mean, yes, I totally agree with Alessandra that I mean, as long as all relevant stakeholders are involved in this kind of task force efforts or whatever it might be, we definitely support it. And well, I'll be wrapping up the whole session, so I don't know when is the time you will tell me, Eva. But I don't know if we want to
have 5 or 6 minutes left. So if you want, yeah.
So shall I start?
Yes, yes, of course, yes.
Okay, because I've been taking notes the whole time, so just to make sure it's the right moment. So, well, thank you once again for being here, to all the speakers, participants, and all the organizers as well. And thank you also for, let's say, following the different sessions of this, which is our first public event organized jointly between the two strategic projects. Also, well, let me thank you, the speakers, for the valuable inputs that were mainly let's say, the feedback I was trying to gather for this wrap up. And well, just to give you a short introduction, with my organization, the Inter-Mediterranean Commission of the CPMR, which is the Conference of Peripheral Maritime Regions, I'm the person in charge of both strategic projects. And in particular, the Inter-Mediterranean Commission is coordinating the capitalization activities in Best Med and supporting Occitania region in the same activities in SMARTMED. So together with the Ministry of Tourism of Greece, that is in charge of the transferring activities, we are very well placed, let's say, to coordinate joint actions also between the two projects. And so through our network, the CPMR, we can indeed be considered also as a multiplier in the transferring and capitalization phases. And it's for this reason also that we are very interested in promoting the project's results, both to nourish the political reflections and influence the policy making, but also to help improve more generally the governance mechanism in the Mediterranean. So for this reason, we've been highly involved from the very beginning in the organization of this joint seminar. And I've been, as I say, taking notes throughout the whole discussion. So I have the honor and also at the same time the challenging task of summarizing the main outcomes of today's event. In session one, we had the opportunity for the first time to present the work carried out so far by the two different projects. Well, in the roundtable, we got inputs and feedback for the fine-tuning of these models, and I would say more generally for the effective transferring also of further projects results, such as the network of sustainable tourism observatories, for instance. So the aim is to enhance, let's say, innovative solutions and also related tourist policies. On the other hand, the Best MED's path model focuses on cultural roots, using also former project results as a base information. And this is done, let's say, in a broader perspective for, let's say, a better management of data through the future MED of sustainable network of sustainable tourism observatories. So we shouldn't forget that this network of sustainable tourism observatory should be built to be an effective governance tool and interact, also cooperate with the relevant actors that have been also intervening today and other interesting existing initiatives. So the testing activities presented are also very different and let's say adapted to the specificities of the two models. But still with a common, let's say, participatory approach. And again, the two projects are very complementary. The Minister of Tourism of Greece explained this complementarity pretty clearly. And as well, Elia reiterated, let's say, the importance of synergies to be created with other projects such as PanoramaMed and the Sustainable Tourism Community. She also highlighted the importance of adapting the results produced to the different levels, including, one crucial point, which is adapting them to the policy and legislative frameworks that might be very different from one country, one region to another, as we know. Actually, also in that context, I wanted to inform you that we do plan a practical follow-up of this first event to involve precisely the relevant stakeholders in the next steps of our strategy of transferring, because we believe that it would be important to not to lose this opportunity to get first feedback from the participants that were with us today and that had the chance to get to know the results of our projects today. In practical terms, let's say the idea is to make the outcome of this event a bit more operational through a sort of survey that will help us also particularly to identify the takers, the potential takers that's, they are so-called takers in the InterMed programs, but we mean stakeholders interested in replicating these results in their respective territories. To sum up, the key messages that came up from the roundtable discussion, we had the chance to hear from one of the associates, the Malta Tourism Authority, that provided also interesting insights into the two projects from the perspective of an island destination that, of course, suffered particularly the repercussion of the pandemic at the moment. And in this context also, it was highlighted that still sustainability remains or is even more crucial for the recovery at the moment. For instance, the new tourism strategy of Malta and the new scheme for skills and training will be based on principles that are very much in line also with the SMARTMED model, for instance. And in terms of adaptations to ensure like greater replication, it was mentioned that the SMARTMED model could be applied to various levels of governance. And so let's say further broken down also to be used at different levels, ranging from higher ones to more regional and local ones. Or even focusing on specific subsectors of specific component of tourism. Another point was the private sector involvement, which is essential and would be, let's say, facilitated in this way by adapting the model. Actually, the testing phase of both projects, and in particular, in this case, of SMARTMED, is indeed, let's say, following this path, because it will be applied and tested at different levels, depending on the partners. We have partners, local partners, regional partners, also national partners. So, we had the opportunity also to hear from two key reference projects for us, which are the Med Sustainable Tourist Community and PanorMed. And both can count, of course, on the important experience gained in the last years of development. On the one hand, the Med Sustainable Tourist Community is developing also its own transferring actions right now. So in parallel to our activities, the lead partner of the community pointed out that even if we are competitors in tourist sector, we are still able and willing to collaborate on this topic. And this is extremely important and more in this particular moment, let's say. In terms of specific recommendation, he mentioned that it's important to identify concrete outputs and clarify especially the specific conditions for applicability. So bear in mind that there are, in fact, different kinds of destinations as well. In addition, he also mentioned that the Council of Europe, the WTO, for instance, have developed already a lot on the specific sector, and this could be, of course, reused and exploited further. Also, Giuseppe reiterated that the governance aspect is key to ensure the sustainability of project results once all these projects will come to an end. And of course, I couldn't agree more that we should indeed reflect on how we can integrate these results into the upcoming ERDF and other funding opportunities such as the recovery funds. And we do appreciate, of course, the help offered by the community project. We want to make sure that this cooperation already in place with this project will be strengthened in the next months as well, of course. On the other hand, the governance platform project, PanorMed, under which the two strategic projects have been conceived from the very beginning, let's say, it remains the key cooperation framework for us also to develop further synergies for common and coordinated actions, let's say. Our colleague Laura highlighted several materials and publications that were released by PanorMed, and there are, of course, reference documents for us for the strategic projects. And he, particularly reminded us the importance of identifying receivers and takers, so the proper receiver and takers willing to replicate this kind of outputs we presented today. Of course, PanorMed and strategic projects are constantly and regularly in touch, and many activities are planned for the months to come, among others, these focus groups he mentioned, and one specific high-level event organized by PanorMed. One important point was made also by Pascal Lagay, who is representing here the InterregMed program joint secretariat. She insisted on the importance of exploiting the complementarity of our two projects, also in synergies with other initiatives and projects today that are here today with us. And she suggested that we go, that we have a wider vision in the long term, so that we go beyond the strictly Interreg world, which is extremely important. So developing, let's say, links beyond and seeking other funds also to be able to continue this work. As we know, tourism will be still crucial as a transversal thematic in the next programming period. The potential, so for the strategic projects also to contribute to the European Green Deal is anyway, clear for tourism, I would say, since it's a cross-cutting topic that will remain, let's say, highly important for the Mediterranean area. And we hope the strategic projects are working in this direction, and we will keep it doing. So to conclude, we have also, the privilege to hear from two key actors in the wider Mediterranean context, which are the WestMed Initiative and the Union for the Mediterranean. It is, I think, quite evident that to be successful, any kind of governance model for sustainable tourism in this area should consider the Mediterranean as a whole. So in a wider perspective, and including partners from the southern and the eastern shores of the basin. So we've seen that the WestMed Initiative counts on a common roadmap and 10 priority actions that are very much in line also with the objectives of our strategic projects. And more importantly, one of the key objectives of the initiative is exactly bringing together these stakeholders to discuss, address common challenges, and develop synergies. And this is precisely one of the goals also of today's event. We are aware of the limitations and the difficulties that this specific moment is bringing to us, but we agree completely on the importance of sharing good practices and lessons learned, as well as reaching the right stakeholders. And so, among others, the WestMed Initiative and the UFM are really crucial in this process, because they are mobilizing already a number of relevant actors in their respective initiatives, with a focus on the South. So this is indeed our main priority. And as highlighted, to build a resilient and sustainable tourism sector, Southern partners are indeed, they need to address the governance structure. So we need to highlight the benefits of replicating these results at territorial level for them, and especially bring them and to promote further exchange with other partners, our project partners, for instance. We mentioned also the 2 points that have been made by Stephanie about the process of transferring capitalizing results. So tailoring outputs from one side at the national local level, and integrating those results also into higher level strategies. So engaging policy players for future sustainability and future opportunities of our work. In general, also, there seems to be a lot of potential for cooperation with the strategic projects and this initiative. One example could be based on the network of sustainable tourism observatories that would promote an integrated, participatory, multi-level approach, and that has the broader, let's say, aim to improve the governance dynamics in the Mediterranean. Also, the development of this WestMed Tourism Accelerator was mentioned, which could be also another initiative that would help improve and innovate the tourism sector through the capitalization also of our results as strategic projects. The last interlocutor we had was the UFM, Alessandra, that has clearly stated also the importance of sustainable tourism as a key priority in the ministerial declaration that was adopted last February, and with the focus also on the employment aspect, let's say, of tourism. This topic is quite central at the moment for the current dedicated technical assistance that is in place, in which also we as CPMR are very much involved. And we changed to produce an operational tool, this was also very well explained, focusing on integrated territorial development with an application to sustainable tourism. This work will be based on previous work done also by the IMC to be adapted, let's say, to different territories and different local communities, as it was mentioned. And it will include this important component of capacity building for tourism stakeholders. So we really hope this could be further exploited in our next, let's say, discussions on the topic. Alessandra also insisted on the importance of involving some partners and multi-level governance, of having a multi-level governance approach in that sense as well. And Best MED and SMARTMED can certainly also explore synergies in this framework and help building this kind of capacities also based on our work. So in summary, I'm almost concluding. All these different initiatives and levels are clearly relevant, I think, to each other and strongly interconnected also with the work we are doing. But we need to continue to exchange knowledge, good practices, and also in a more structured way, I would say. So we really want to improve in this sense, to work together with all the participants today and the speakers. I think I have to conclude. So just let me thank you one more special thank you to the organizers of the event, the Ministry of Tourism of Croatia, SMARTMED and Best MED lead partners, and of course the two partnerships that helped a lot, and of course our facilitator and our panelists. We really hope to keep working together, and we will follow up to this event very soon. So that's all from my side. I'll give you the floor, Eva.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this summary. So before we continue to thank yous, we have a very exciting announcement to make. We have a winner of our Mediterranean quiz that was on our platform. And I'm proud to say that Ronald Sultana has won. And Ronald, just so you know, congratulations. And we'll be in touch about the delivery of your surprise present for you. So congrats, Ronald. I would just like to say thank you to everyone. Thank you to the organizers. Thank you to the participants for being with us all day long. Thank you, everybody, for being here. We hope you had a great day. We hope you learned a lot. And I think it was a great webinar, and I learned a lot. Thank you to everyone. Please go to our platform to fill up a short word cloud with how are you feeling after the seminar. The platform is very active. Please go to it, explore countries, our country partners. It will be posted there, more information coming on soon. You'll receive all of the information in your emails. And thank you to everyone, and have a great rest of the day. Thank you so much.